This video, I'm going to be talking about the contemporary research involving personality and how we understand personality today. Uh, by doing that, I'm going to be looking at a number of things: the trait perspective, which is the dominant perspective now, as well as probably the behavioral perspective to talk about how someone like Skinner would understand personality. In the previous video, we defined personality and we looked at how humanistic psychologists understand personality and study it. So if that sounds new to you, you should go back and watch that video first, and then that'll set you up for this video that we're beginning now. So let's start by just defining what a trait is. Okay, so if we're talking about a trait perspective, we should probably talk about what is a trait. So a trait is an individual's unique constellation of durable dispositions and consistent ways of behaving. Um, that's very vague and kind of all over the place. Basically, it's who you are, how do you act, and how are you feeling generally across time. Just kind of what are the dominant ways that you think and feel, or think and act, really, and that the combination of these then constitutes our entire personality. So, thinking of what a trait is, really just any adjective that can describe a person, those really can be traits. And in 1936, there was an identification of 18,000 words that represented traits of humans. Like that's a lot of words that we could identify as. So the question then becomes, how do we then understand the basically limitless combination of traits, and how do we understand that in terms of individuals? So the first thing is we should get back to something that we talked a little bit about before, which was factor analysis. So contrasting the trait perspective with some of the earlier perspectives on personality, namely Freudian and humanistic, both Freud and Rogers developed their theories of personality based off of their patients. They were both clinicians, they were doctors, they were therapists. And most of them came to Freud or Rogers with, a psychological disorder, which was then identified, through looking at their personality. Trait theorists, on the other hand, look at key dimensions of personality by seeing how many of these traits kind of like, I don't know, hang together or, have a strong correlation. So basically, what they did was they asked research participants to rate themselves or others on large numbers of adjectives, right? So we can talk about independence, self-control, right? Self-reliance, insecurity, irritability, those kinds of things. And then these researchers used factor analysis, right? That statistical technique looking to identify clusters of things, and saw that people's ratings tended to correlate strongly across people. So, in other words, if someone was ratings of reliable, I'm trying to find that on the screen here, right? Reliable and prompt would probably correlate very highly, right? Because if someone's reliable, then they're probably not running late and not holding you up and those kinds of things. Same thing with something like outgoing and lively, right? You can see that people are, if you're outgoing, you're probably going to be characterized as lively, and vice versa. So we see that there's these kind of combinations of traits that correlate to each other, and a high prevalence in one is likely to signify a high or relevance in another. So another thing that was done, or that has been done with trait theorists over the years, is by using factor analysis, they looked at all of those traits, those thousands of personality traits, and really boiled it down to really 16. This was done in the 60s by psychologist Raymond Cattell. So he basically developed a personality test that measured people's scores on these 16 specific personality dimensions. And you can see that they're kind of based off of like a range, right? So just going at the top, it's pretty obvious how this works, right? Are you outgoing or reserved, right? Are you more outgoing or more reserved? Are you more affected by your feelings or more emotionally stable? Are you tough minded or are you sensitive? Are you self assured or are you apprehensive, right? So you can see how these are kind of opposites, relaxed versus tense, right? Um, Group dependent, self sufficient. And you can then measure based off of answering a battery of questions, really, where you fall on these scales compared to other people, and that understanding which traits are more, that you are more strongly associated with, that is your personality. So this weird looking squiggly line going down the middle, that's someone's personality, right? They're, pretty evenly between relaxed and outgoing. They're a little bit more intelligent, more emotionally stable, but they're also more, more self-assured, they're more conservative, they're more self-sufficient, tough-minded, you guys can follow the dots. I don't need to connect them for you. And that really developed, this factor analysis really continued until we get to what we now call the dominant perspective in personality theory, and that's the big five traits. Okay. And these are the big five: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Um, the great thing about this is it forms a lovely mnemonic device of ocean or canoe, whichever you prefer. Um, and some of you are thinking, wait, ocean and canoe are the same letters? Yeah, they are. They are. So let's take a few minutes and kind of dive into these five larger traits that are made up of smaller traits that I think will make some sense, because these then become like the core traits um, that someone is going to have. And this is what we really assess people on, across the field of psychology today. So let's start with the first one. Openness to experience, right? People who are open to experience, new experiences, are adventuresome. They like trying new foods. They value travel. They, want to try as many new things as possible, right? They're open. They're pretty easygoing. They are more prone to their feelings. Um, right, it's our tendency to be curious, unconventional, and imaginative, right? So whether that's seeking out new opportunities in the job market, in relationships, in travel, in culture, these people who are more open to experience tend to value those things. People on the low openness side, right, because remember there's two components to these things. People on the low openness side prefer more familiar things, right? So a good example here is, are you the type of person who likes to go to the same restaurant, every week, or, every month, or whenever you can go out? Do you prefer the same restaurant and you get the same thing? Or do you like to try a bunch of different places? Um, you know, that's really the measure. That's one of the measures that we can look at to openness to experience, right? If you prefer the comfort and the familiarity of, the restaurant you've always gone to, then you have low openness. If you are, like to try new things, then you're higher on the openness scale. Um, I'll share a story. I have a family friend who, every Tuesday they have spaghetti. Doesn't matter what's going on. Doesn't matter where they're at. Doesn't matter if they're on vacation. Doesn't matter. Every Tuesday he has spaghetti for dinner. Um, I think every Thursday, when they're in the city, they go to the same restaurant and get pizza. Um, it's just one of those things that's just what they do. They don't go to a different pizza place. They don't just get any pizza. It's got to be pizza from this one spot that they go to, and they know everybody, and they he and his wife seek comfort in that. Um, he's very low openness to experience. He doesn't like trying new things. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's his personality, right? Whereas there are other people who, want to try new. If they go out once a week, they want to try a new restaurant every week and try new foods that they've never had, and travel to countries they've never been before. Like, these are the two ends to the extremes here. Okay, so that's openness. Conscientiousness is when you have three arms. No, I have no idea what this stock image is. It's just such. Who knows? But people who are conscientious are reliable, organized, self-disciplined. They are competent, right? They are able to get things done. They understand the obligations that they have to others. They're very disciplined um, and deliberative in their actions. Right? These are people who are high conscientiousness. People low on conscientiousness scale, they're undependable, careless, maybe a little lazy. Right? Again, no judgments here. It's just that these are kind of two sides of the coin. Right? Either you're more likely to be reliable and organized, or you're more likely to be unorganized and careless. And that, again, there's nothing bad, right? You can see being careless is a good thing, right? If you're um easygoing, those kinds of things, right? That's kind of low conscientiousness. Extroversion, I don't know why I just did that. Oh, because these used to be in completely different order, and I rearranged the slides so that they would follow our mnemonic device of ocean. Because why create this mnemonic device on the side if you're not going to put them in that order? You gotta love slide decks. Extroversion is basically someone who's outgoing. Are they yeah, sensation seeking or excitement seeking? Or how warm are they? How do they interact with others? Right? People who are extroverted tend to have this kind of, you know, strong personality. They're people tend to like them or be drawn to them. Um, on the opposite side, right? When we talk about introversion, that's shyness, caution, people a little bit more guarded. Um, Now, it's also important to think about when we talk about, are you an introvert or an extrovert? That's actually a little different from what we're talking about here. We'll talk more about that later. But that's different from this type of extroversion, right? This is your personality trait. This is your classic. Um, in fact, actually, I'd argue that we use this word incorrectly. Especially because it gets so confused with introvert or extrovert. So when you think of an extrovert, right, that's like someone who's the life of the party, and an introvert is someone who might prefer, staying in on a Saturday night and reading or something. Again, no judgments, right? It's just people are different. Um, that's pretty much how this is understood, right? So someone who is high on extroversion is that kind of outgoing, assertive person, whereas someone who's more on the lower end of this, right, on the introversion side of things, they tend to be a little bit more guarded, a little bit more cautious, a little bit more, um, you know, not seeking the spotlight kind of thing. Um, we'll get to introvert and extrovert later. Uh, Agreeableness. Okay, so the A, agreeableness. That how much do people like you? How are you basically like a decent person? Agreeable people are kind and helpful. They're affectionate towards others. They're straightforward. They tend not to lie. Um, they're compassionate. They understand other people. People who have low agreeableness might be seen as cold or hostile or off-putting. Um, you can see how these are two sides of the same thing, right? Do people tend to trust you? Are you helping others, or are you more cold, indifferent? Those are the scales of agreeableness. And then finally, neuroticism. Neuroticism is interesting because it's the one negative kind of emotional component here. At least we're talking about two sides, right? So there's like openness, and then people who aren't open. There's people who are conscientious, people who aren't, right? But it's kind of the default is the more what we might see in society as like a positive thing. People who are high on the neuroticism scale tend to have high levels of anxiety, self consciousness. They are, really kind of worried types of people. Those tend to be high on the neuroticism scale. Whereas people who are more, relaxed, easygoing, kind of go with the flow kind of people, they tend to be on low neuroticism. Again, so you can have highs and lows of all of these. So those are the big five traits. Those are the big personality clusters, and you can see that there are smaller traits within the larger groupings here. Um, And depending on where you fall on each of them, that's going to drive your personality. Um, it's not one of those things where, like, oh, my personality is I'm highly open to new experiences, right? No, we all have a level of one of these five components, right? We're all in some ways open to experience. We're all in some ways extroverted or have extroversion or introversion. We're all in some ways agreeable or disagreeable. Um, so it's the combination of these five traits that really make up our entire personality from the trait perspective. Let's take a shift here and talk about Skinner and behavioral understanding of personality. And I actually think that you guys will probably understand this pretty straightforward. Remember, Skinner wanted nothing to do with cognition or things happening kind of like in your mind. It was all about how you act and the behavior that you have. So for Skinner, personality was just what have you been conditioned to do over time, right? That we've been conditioned to be agreeable or open, and that those things have been reinforced over time through our lifespan, right? It's constant learning and adapting to new situations based off of their consequences, right? The rewards, reinforcements, or punishments. So let's look at a situation here, right? So you're at a party, a really large party, but you don't really know too many people. Maybe a friend brought you along, and you're kind of maybe a little uncomfortable uh, with being at such a large party, not really knowing anybody. So here are like some four kind of major responses that people who were actually asked this question said that they would probably do. One is circulate, try to blend into the party, but maybe don't be so outgoing, maybe, waiting for people to come up to you. Response two, right? Stick to the people your one friend, you stick to their side, you never let them leave. Um, you know, Three, I guess, is leaving the party a little bit. Maybe go check out the book collection that the person has. It's a very good thing to always have books, by the way. It is. I do like to have some books out whenever I have people over. It's been a year, but just have something for people to talk about. So maybe that's people get involved in that with different personalities. And then the other option is to leave, right? Is just get out of there. And you can see from a Skinnerian perspective, right, that whichever one gets reinforced is the one that you'll probably do again next time, right? So if you circulate and you meet some really interesting people and you have really fun conversations and get involved, and then that's probably what you're going to do next time you're in a large party where you don't know many people. Whereas if you leave, right, because you're uncomfortable, well, leaving is negative reinforcement, right? It's relieving that sense of anxiety of not knowing many people. So you leave. Well, that then becomes reinforced, and the next time you're in that situation, you're more likely to leave. Um, so you can see how from a behavioral perspective, right? These are responses to novel situations, right? Will then eventually develop your personality. That's kind of how you respond and act in all these different situations, right? Maybe you become the guy who reads the books at the party. I don't know. Maybe that's what you really want to do. Go for it. Who cares? No one's judging you. So again, when Skinner was kind of looking at these things, right, and talking about operant conditioning, this is really where he said this is where people's personalities differ, right? Is because over the course of our lives, some things for some of us get reinforced, others don't, right? You can imagine at that party scenario that if that's where you met your girlfriend, right, then the next time you're at a party, you're going to be more likely to engage with strangers because it worked out for you last time. Um, Whereas, if you got rejected or something, then you're going to be more reserved, maybe, or more, you know, maybe I don't want to say not self-assured, but more, just maybe self-conscious of the fact that you're at this giant party, you don't really know anybody. So from Skinner, right, it's all about our responses. It's all about, what we do and then how those behaviors are either reinforced or punished. So very different from the trait perspective, right? Trait perspective is looking at things from really a self-report or you fill out a survey or something, and how you're more likely or less likely to respond. Um, and then that's going to give us a sense of a personality, a stable pattern of behaving over time. Whereas Skinner's looking at it more of these individual responses from very different things are going to adapt and change us so that we then act and think a certain way going forward. So those are the things that we covered in this video. Um, we talked a lot about factor analysis and developing traits and clusters of traits. We looked at the big five personality traits, and we went through a behaviorist perspective on personality. In the next video, we're going to talk social cognitive theory, and just kind of assess all of these theories together as to their positives and weaknesses. That'll be in the next video, and I will see you then.